Hey everybody, Marc Victor here. Unfortunately, we didn't get into hardly anything on foreign policy during the debate, but I wanted to share a few thoughts about foreign policy in terms of what I would have said had we been asked a question. And first I want to start with basically the China-Taiwan issue. Very briefly, look, my position on foreign policy really is the same no matter what country we're talking about. For starters, I think we should always pursue policies of peace. We should definitely avoid war. War is not an abstraction for me. I served in Desert Storm, and I was in a hole up at the front by the minefields, taking anthrax pills and nerve agent pills. I know what it's like to be involved in these kinds of conflicts. It's not a soccer game. People die, people get injured, we spend billions of dollars. We should avoid war as much as we possibly can. Doesn't mean that we always can, right? I mean, there are aggressors in the world, and the question is always the same here. Is somebody aggressing against us? If they are, we need to act. Is somebody creating a threat to aggress against us? If they are, we may need to act as well too, and we need to have the strongest military if we're gonna act. But if we're not forced into acting, we should be pursuing policies of peace. And so we should be holding high-level, serious discussions with the people in China. We should always be doing this. We should be sitting and talking and establishing peace as something we should be mutually working towards. But if we do have to act, we should remain the strongest military in the world. We are the strongest military in the world, and we need to stay that way. How did we get to be the strongest military in the world? Every country wishes they had the strongest military in the world. But the way to get the strongest military in the world is to have the strongest economy in the world. That's how it works, right? The reason we're talking about China is because China pivoted towards capitalism. It wasn't that long ago China could barely feed its people. They were starving there. How did China go from barely feeding its people to the second largest economy in the world? How did that happen? It went that way because China realized we're doing something wrong. We need to pivot towards capitalism. That's what happened. And that's why they're moving so aggressively as an economy in the world. And that's why they're a military force to be reckoned with. I think it's important to note that we're not talking about Venezuela and we're not talking about Greece. Why aren't we talking about Venezuela and Greece? Well, Venezuela and Greece pivoted towards forced socialism. They ruined their economies. That's why we're not concerned about their military and their economy, and we are about China. I think that's a very important point to keep in mind. We need to remain the #1 world's economy, and the way to do that is to cut taxes dramatically, cut unnecessary regulations, and dramatically cut spending. If you want to be more competitive with China in manufacturing, we need to be more competitive by lowering the regulatory burden. Yes, China has less expensive labor. They can use that. But there's still a very expensive transaction cost to move goods from China to the United States. We could be much more competitive if we reduced our regulatory burden in the United States. We should be the best place in the world to do business. Look, regarding Taiwan, this is a very thick, heavy, comprehensive type of a question, and we should avoid firm policy statements on Taiwan for many reasons. First, it's very smart militarily. We shouldn't be drawing lines in the sand saying what we're going to do. Somebody may cross a line and then would be forced to act. We should be ambiguous in terms of our Taiwan policy. That's what we're doing now, right? We should not forecast our military decisions. I don't have access to the intelligence that I would want to review to make detailed statements and assessments about Taiwan. Taiwan hasn't voted to be an independent nation. They have, in essence, said, we want the status quo. The status quo is kind of a crazy situation, right? We have this one China policy, but yet we send help to Taiwan. It's an untenable situation. China is a nuclear-powered country, so we need to be extraordinarily careful here. This is why we should be sitting down and brokering peace there. I prefer peace through trade, right? We're either going to get goods and services that move across borders, or we get bombs and guns that move across borders. Ronald Reagan said it back in the 80s. Peace through trade. This makes a lot of sense if you think about it. We want to get rich, powerful, influential people in our country trading with similar people in their country. Why? Because they have a lot of influence in the government as well. In having wars benefits the military-industrial complex and certain corporations. War is a bad idea. Trade is a much better idea. That's a brief overview of my thoughts on China. You can learn more by going to liveandletliverevolution.com. I lay out lots of different issues there. There's a whole section there about foreign policy generally. But that's what I would have said had I been asked about the China issue.